What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? The NHL playoffs are in full swing, and as usual, the storylines are intriguing. And there is no bigger story right now than what is unfolding in the series between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Columbus Blue Jackets. As of this recording, the Lightning, considered by many to be the best regular season team of all time, are in an 0-3 hole and facing elimination. Our hockey guru Ryan Lake will join us in a minute to talk about that series and all the others. So thanks for stopping by as we dive into the NHL playoffs on Sports 360. Well, I'm on the phone today with Ryan Lake. Ryan is the owner of Beyond the Playbook, a sports consultancy firm that is engaged in various sports, including hockey. It's an athlete-focused, athlete-driven agency. And Ryan is joining us and, in fact, coming back for a second time on Sports 360, this time to talk about the NHL playoffs. Ryan, how are you today?
Doing great. Excited about the games going on, and it's been an exciting playoff so far.
Yeah, and we are actually coming in midstream as all of the series have begun. And in fact, the Islanders and Pittsburgh, as of this recording, just finished up Game 3. So we're going to get into all of that, but I'm glad to have you back to talk about the NHL, to talk about hockey and some of the stories surrounding this year's postseason. And you're right. I mean, it's been exciting, and there's been some, in particular, one of the series, and we're going to start in the East with Tampa Bay and Columbus, and just run through the series, talk about where we are, how we got there, and whatever observations you have on each one of these series. But I would like to start in the Eastern Conference and start with that Tampa Bay Columbus Jackets series. I mean, man, what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone really saw this coming. We're just hours away from the start of Game 3, and Tampa finds itself down 2-0 against the Blue Jackets. And Tampa was the best team in the regular season and won the President's Trophy, tied an NHL record for most wins with 62. That hasn't been done since the '96 Detroit Red Wings, which coincidentally also didn't make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. And it doesn't look like Tampa, unless things really change, they're going to have a really hard time getting out of this first round matchup with Columbus. I think it's really surprising. But if you do a deeper dive on the players, in this matchup, maybe it's not as surprising as it should be. The Blue Jackets, made 4 major moves at the deadline, picking up Duchesne and Dzingel. Those are the 2 big names that came over at the deadline. But they finally found some chemistry with Panarin, Atkinson, and it's really starting to click for them. And Duchesne last game had 4 points. Coming into this playoffs, he had never scored a playoff goal before, and he got his first one last game, and he's just on fire right now. Columbus is just clicking on all cylinders, and at the start of this series, they went down 0-3 in the first period to Tampa Bay, and it looked like Tampa Bay was just going to roll right over them like everyone thought. But the Blue Jackets really dug deep, and they battled back and won that first game, and then they dominated the second game, which led to some major frustration on Tampa Bay's part. And Kucherov, their best player, he broke a record for most points by a Russian-born player in the regular season, and he did a dirty hit, and he's been suspended for a game, so he's out tonight, Game 3, pivotal game in Columbus. So if the Blue Jackets can continue playing the way they play, then they're going to go up 3-0. And Tampa is really as their coach put it, it's a five alarm fire going on right now, and they don't really seem to be moving in the right direction at all. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens tonight.
Sure. And when you look at this, from a historical perspective, I would have to imagine if Tampa somehow loses this series and they're down 0-2, if they lose this series, this would have to rank among the biggest upsets, I would imagine, in NHL playoff history.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of another upset that would be at this magnitude. It's interesting. It's most often the teams that win the President's Trophy for the best record in the regular season don't do that well in the playoffs. So in one respect, it's not that surprising, but a team that was so dominant as Tampa being, really pushed to the limit right now by the Blue Jackets that barely made the playoffs. It's shocking, and I don't think anyone saw it coming, and it'll probably go down in history as the biggest upset, at least in the
Yeah.
modern era.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. As you said, Game 3 is on tap tonight as we're taping this on Sunday, April 14th. Let's move ahead, and again, in no particular order, but just staying with a wild card team, and that is Carolina and Washington. Washington is ahead in that series, 2-0. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen so far in that one.
Yeah, the Capitals are really kind of picked up right where they left off last year in the playoffs. Game, stellar performances from TJ Oshie and Nicholas Backstrom and Ovechkin's chipping in. They seem to be firing on all cylinders. But the Hurricanes are, they're putting up a good fight. They came back and lost by 1 in the first game. So I think they scored 3 goals in the third period, and then yesterday's game they forced overtime. And Brooks Orpik, he got his 4th playoff goal in his career to win the overtime winner. But they're heading back down to Carolina, which they have a massive home ice advantage. They've created this whole storm surge, which some people in hockey have called them a bunch of jerks, and they've really played up to it with their celebrations after every win, and they've gotten their fans behind them. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Hurricanes are able to fight back in this series. And I won't be surprised if this goes 7 games. I think the Hurricanes have enough talent with Sebastian Aho and Williams and Stahl, and I think they're underrated, and the Capitals might fall into thinking they're 2 games up and they have this series wrapped up. But I think the Hurricanes have some more to say about it.
Well, we'll see. Game 3 is tomorrow night, I believe, and so we'll see how that one turns out. But speaking of Game 3, we had a Game 3 earlier today between the Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Islanders took care of business again and now lead 3-0. Does that one come as a surprise to you?
To me it does, and I think the Islanders have been flying under the radar all season, but they have a really strong team up and down, and the Penguins, they've played a lot of hockey over the last 5, 7, 10 years, getting to the Eastern Conference Championship or the finals almost every year. And I think it's starting to wear on them. Crosby and Malkin, haven't really been putting together a solid campaign. But the Islanders, with Eberle and Bailey and some of these other stars, young players that they have, I think they've really clicked and have strong chemistry, and they know how to play the Penguins, and it's a bad matchup for the Penguins, and the Islanders are showing it. They're going up 3-0, and maybe the Pittsburgh can dig deep and win the next game and force a Game 5, but I don't really see it going past 5 games. So I think the Islanders are moving on, and they're going to be tough to handle for the next team they play.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously they have a commanding lead right now, and so we'll see if Pittsburgh's able to bounce back. But your point is a good one in terms of, going teams that go deep into the playoffs. And we see this especially in hockey, in basketball, right? There's a lot of wear and tear that comes with that when you have to run through the type of gauntlet that teams have to do if they're going to advance deep into the playoffs or win a championship. And so we'll see if Pittsburgh, what they have left in the tank. But rounding out the East, we then have Boston and Toronto, a series that is knotted up at one game apiece. What observations you have for that series?
No, I think this is probably one of the most exciting series we have, in the entire playoffs right now. Boston and Toronto have built up a rivalry over the last couple of years playing in the playoffs. Boston's gotten the upper hand in the last few years. Boston came out and didn't really play very well in game one, and Toronto with Mitch Marner, dominated. And then last game, it was really the opposite. Boston came out and really gave it to Toronto and made a really strong, showing that tied up the series. And now we're going back to Toronto, which is going to be crazy up there and with the fan base. And, the one thing that might swing this series is Nazem Kadri has an in-person hearing with the player safety department today for a hit that he put on DeBrusque yesterday. A hit to the head, which, isn't the first time Kadri's done that. And so he could get over 6 games suspension, which would be a major loss for Toronto. But, these teams match up really well. They have superstars on both ends. It's been a fast-paced, exciting. I'm thinking 7 games for this series. I'm hoping Toronto can pull it out, but, I think it could really go either way. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, and the potential discipline that you just talked about obviously could play a major factor in that series. So, but that one right now is tied at 1 apiece. And as we move to the West, also tied 1 apiece, Calgary and Colorado. That series, what do you see there in terms of those two teams? I mean, Calgary, obviously, I believe they won 50 games this year, and Colorado grabbed the second wild card. How do you see that series so far?
This is another really exciting series, and I think the Flames were the best team in the West, and locked up a playoff spot pretty early on. And I think they've been surprised a little bit by the Avalanche and the speed of the Avalanche. That second wild card team in the West and kind of squeaked in at the end, which is kind of what the Avalanche has done the last couple of years. Putting up a strong push at the end of the season to get into the playoffs. But that might lead people to think Calgary has this wrapped up. But the Avalanche really have some strong players. And McKinnon, he got 99 points this season. He actually scored the game winner in overtime yesterday to tie up the series. Mikko Rantanen just came back from injury. He's a big piece for the Avalanche. And, that first line of McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen, was the highest scoring first line and really kind of dominated the first half of the regular season. And now they're starting to click and get healthy and making some problems for the Flames. The Flames are a highly talented group too. They have Johnny Hockey and Johnny Gaudreau. Kachuk, who's been a major pest and playing really well for the Flames. Really getting under the skin of the Avalanche players and getting some power play opportunities. The Flames have Giordano, who's going to win the Norris Trophy as the best defensive player in this season. So, they're highly talented. One game changer for this series might be the addition of Cal McCarr for the Avalanche. So he just finished playing in the national championship game with UMass for the NCAA Frozen Four. And he won the Hobey Baker as the best player in college hockey this year. But he's going to suit up tomorrow night for the Avalanche in Game 3. So that's going to be exciting to see, the difference he can make. He's, dynamic, fast skating defenseman that, people have compared to Erik Karlsson on San Jose Sharks as, one of the best defensemen in the game right now. So it'll be really interesting to see how that changes the series. If it's too big of a stage for a young rookie or if he's able to contribute and help the Avalanche. But I think this series probably gets to 7 games as well. I think, they're evenly matched up, and it's kind of going to go back and forth throughout the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and interesting storylines as you pointed out. Now you mentioned San Jose, but I want to go next to the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues. The Blues are up 2-0 in that series. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that one, your thoughts on where that sits right now, and perhaps, whether or not Winnipeg has the ability to come back and make this a competitive series.
Yeah, this is a really good matchup, and the problem, one of the issues or complaints people have about the way the NHL does their playoffs now is you get some of the best matchups in the first round, and this is a matchup that you could see in the Western Conference Finals championship game if the playoff system was set up a little bit differently. Both teams are highly skilled. They both are built to win the Stanley Cup. St. Louis, was the best team since January in the entire NHL, and really they went from second worst team in the league at Christmas and to battling for the Central Division championship. So I think it's a highly competitive series. St. Louis is, as you said, won the first 2 games in Winnipeg, which is, pretty surprising. I think Winnipeg is going to battle back and take a game or 2 here in St. Louis, but at the same time, I won't be surprised if St. Louis is able to pull off the sweep. They're just playing at an unreal level right now, and they're led by Ryan O'Reilly, who they picked up in the offseason in a major trade with Buffalo. He's been dominating in the face-off circle and really, really playing well right now. And then they have this rookie phenom goaltender, a 25-year-old rookie, Billington, that's just been dominating. And the Jets haven't really been able to figure him out yet. But the Jets, they're highly talented. They have Line and Wheeler and Scheifele, and they can score at will on most teams. So if they can figure out, Billington, they should be able to battle their way back into the series.
All right, and right now, as you said, the Jets are in an 0-2 hole as they face off tonight, in fact, in St. Louis. The next series that I want to touch upon is the Nashville Predators and the Dallas Stars. That series also knotted up at 1. How do you see that one?
Both teams kind of stumbled their way through the end of the regular season. And it's been a pretty low-scoring affair so far. The game yesterday went to overtime when the Predators were able to tie it up. The Stars took the first game in Nashville, which is, always a huge deal and wins them home ice advantage for the rest of the series, unless the Predators can win, in Dallas. But there's high-powered players on both sides. The Predators have played a lot of hockey the last couple of years. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years ago, and then they lost to Winnipeg, I believe, last year in the semifinals for the Western Conference. And so, they're probably a little beamed up and a little tired, kind of like Pittsburgh, but you can't underestimate them. They have some superstars, and Dallas, they have superstars as well. So it's going to be a really close, tight series. So far, it's been really tight checking and low scoring. And I think that's largely because of the superstar defensemen that are playing in this series, like PK Subban for the Predators, Roman Josi for the Predators, and Heiskanen, who's, this up-and-coming superstar for the Dallas Stars, who's able to shut down opposing forwards, but also, score some impressive goals. So, I could see this going 7 games as well. it's not as fast paced or exciting as, say, the Winnipeg series or the Toronto series, but if you love defensive hockey, then you're going to love this series.
Mm. Okay, and then our last game in the West, San Jose and the Vegas Golden Knights. Again, a series that is also tied up 1-1, heading to Vegas. How do you see this one?
This one's an exciting game as well. The Sharks are, poised to win the Stanley Cup as they have been for the last 5 years. They have a star-studded lineup. They added Erik Karlsson from Ottawa over the off season. He's arguably the best defenseman in the league, and they pair him with Brett Burns, who is in the same conversation for best defenseman in the league. Their one weakness is their goaltending, and Martin Jones put up a really pretty strong game in Game 1, and they were able to win, pretty decisively over the Knights. But Game 2, Jones got pulled in the first period. The Knights scored, I believe, 3 goals on 7 shots. And so that's probably where the Sharks have the most concern, is over their goaltending. On the Vegas side, they're pretty much the same team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, except for some major additions. So they added, in the offseason, they added Paul Stastny and Max Pacioretty, very highly skilled forwards that can score and are game-changing forwards. And then at the deadline, they added Mark Stone, who was the biggest catch at the trade deadline, and he's been delivering. He has 2 goals in the series so far. The really interesting and potentially game-changing addition is Nikita Gusev, who's coming over from the KHL. So the Knights, acquired him in the expansion draft from Tampa Bay, but he won most valuable player in the KHL last year. In the Olympics last year, also won the best player in the Olympics. And he's going to be slotting in, I hear, on the third line for Vegas tonight. So that's going to be really interesting to see how, adding such an offensive gifted player, if that can really push Vegas over the edge. This series is hard to call. I give the edge to Vegas because of their experience and their ability to really play well together as a team. But the Sharks is probably one of the most loaded rosters in the entire league. So you can't discount them.
Mm.
And game 3 is getting ready to start. So I think it will be a super fast, really exciting series to watch.
Now, Ryan, I wanted to ask you a question about something that you alluded to, and that is goaltending. One of the things I don't profess to be a big hockey guy. I'm not. But, I do watch hockey. I've watched hockey over the years. And one of the things that's always impressed me, especially in the postseason, is the importance of goaltending and how, you can get a goaltender who's hot and just, teams can ride that goaltender deep into the postseason and even to the Stanley Cup. And I think that's kind of what makes hockey a little bit different in that regard. I mean, in some of the other sports, I don't know if there's any one position player who, a baseball team or a basketball team can ride in a similar way that we see in hockey. When you look at these series and and the way the way the season ended, is there any particular goaltender that you think is coming in and is just really on the top of his game?
There's a couple. St. Louis Binnington is, this phenom rookie that has really dominated the second half of the season and continued it so far in the postseason. I think he's playing better than anyone ever expected him to play. Earlier in the start of this season, St. Louis actually tried to send him to the East Coast Hockey League, which was the minor league to the minor league. And so it's really surprising to see him come in and just dominate the way he's dominated. And then in the Avalanche Flames series, Grubauer for the Avalanche, you know, he was the backup goaltender probably starting in March. And he just won the job and stole it from Varlamov, and he's hung on to it and, you know, really, really standing on his head, as we say in hockey, playing out of his mind. But I think those two guys are probably the guys that are playing the best so far. You know, there's big name goaltenders on Tampa Bay. Vasilevsky, he's going to win the Vezina as the best goalie of the regular season. So if he can change things up, he can, you know, steal that series back for them. He has the ability, you know, to win multiple series by himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But you've given us a good overview of where the series are right now, each one of these series. And as you said, I mean, you know, we had one game already this afternoon with the Islanders beating Pittsburgh 4-1. And we have another 3 games on tap for today. So, listen, man, I'm glad to have you come back with us to look at these series. I would like you to come back as we go into round 2 and beyond. And hopefully we'll be able to connect before those series start. And so we can maybe get some get a preview of the series before they get underway. But I do appreciate you, Ryan, taking some time today to, you know, to bring us up to speed on all of these series, which are in progress, and look forward to seeing how this first round ends up and bringing you back before the second round and having a look at where we are at that point.
Absolutely. And, you know, I love talking hockey, so really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and would love to, you know, continue as the playoffs go through. And so hopefully we get some more storylines and some game sevens coming up, which are always the best.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. I think the NHL postseason is known for that, and I don't see why this year should be any different. So we look forward to doing it. So thanks again, Ryan, for coming on, and we'll catch up with you real soon.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, Ryan.